Good evening, and welcome to the special meeting of the Verona City School District for Wednesday, March 22nd. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ferris?
Here.
Mrs. Chapman?
Here.
Mr. Mack?
Here.
Mr. Postal?
Here.
Mrs. Zerke?
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to start the meeting with public participation for agenda items. I'd like to remind our speakers that when you get to the podium, if you could please state your name and city. And remember that you'll have 3 minutes to speak and will be timed. And we won't be able to answer any questions, but we are here to listen to what you have to say and just ask everybody to be respectful of everyone else. So the first person we have up is Bruna Galati.
I'm Bruna Galati and I live in Middleburg Heights. I've been a resident here for about 4 years. I'm here today to speak about not sending a voucher to the Ohio Coalition to denounce school choice vouchers and the impact they have on school districts' pupils, taxpayers, voters, and staff. As a taxpayer, I'm not in favor of sending more than $10,000, and that's $2 per student for over 5,700 students in the school district, to the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Advocacy. First, it's important to understand that school choice vouchers are funded by the state from designated appropriation line items. This means that the funding for these vouchers is separate from the funding allocated to school districts. Therefore, the claim that payment to private schools through school choice vouchers diminishes the amount of funding and levels of educational opportunities in school districts is baseless. Second, it's worth noting that the deduction of school voucher funds from funds available to the school districts does not necessarily reduce the funding available to support the additional needs of district minority pupils, students in poverty, and students with disabilities. In fact, school choice vouchers provide an opportunity for these pupils to receive a better education that meets their individual needs. It is unfair to assume that public schools are the only institutions that can cater to the needs of these students. It is important to note that school choice vouchers have been proven to be beneficial for students who come from low-income families or have disabilities. These students often have limited access to high-quality education, and the vouchers provide them with the opportunity to attend a private school that can cater to their needs. This results in an increase in the level of educational opportunities available to students rather than a decrease. Furthermore, the notion that the deduction of school voucher funds from the appropriations that fund school districts violates the Ohio Constitution and clear directives of the Ohio Supreme Court is also not entirely accurate. The state has a duty to ensure that students have access to quality education, and the use of school choice vouchers is one way to achieve that. Additionally, the Supreme Court has not ruled against the use of vouchers and has even upheld the constitutionality in some cases. Last, the assertion that the deduction of school voucher funds from the appropriations that fund school districts increases reliance on local tax revenue to maintain school operations in violation of the Ohio Constitution and clear directives of the Ohio Supreme Court is flawed. The funding for school choice vouchers is separate from the funding for public schools, and the use of these vouchers does not necessarily lead to an increased reliance on local tax revenue. In conclusion, it is clear that school choice vouchers provide an opportunity for students to receive quality education that meets their individual needs. Giving this voucher to the Ohio Coalition is based on unfounded claims and lacks any real evidence to support its assertions. Therefore, I urge you to not proceed sending this voucher for more than $10,000 to the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Advocacy of School Funding. Thank you.
Next is Mr. James Grosh.
Can they hear, or there's no microphone up here, can get them recorded? No. I'm here tonight, school board, in support of the backpack bill and innovative education reform that ensures Ohio funds students, not bureaucracy. This bill is a much-needed solution to the problems faced by Ohio's education system, and it has the potential to make a significant positive impact on the lives of our students. The backpack bill is designed to ensure that all Ohio students are eligible for a taxpayer-funded scholarship that goes wherever they go, or if they opt into the program. This means that regardless of the school a student attends, the funding follows them, giving them the freedom to choose the best educational option for their needs. The backpack bill ensures that funding is directed towards the education of students, not the bureaucracy that often accompanies traditional school systems. This means that the money goes directly towards providing students with the resources they need to succeed, such as textbooks, technology, and other educational materials. This bill is especially important for Ohio's low-income families who may not have the means to afford a quality education for their children. The backpack bill empowers these families to choose the best educational option for their children without the financial burden of paying for it out of their own pockets. In addition, the backpack bill promotes innovation and competition among educational providers. Schools and educational providers will have to compete for students, which will incentivize them to improve the quality of their education and provide better services to their students. The backpack bill is a common sense solution that benefits everyone involved. It provides greater freedom and flexibility to students and families, promotes competition and innovation in education, and ensures that taxpayer funds are directed toward the education of students, not the bureaucracy. But this school district realized that this will possibly hurt its monopoly over education and decided that it is not good for business to have competition in the market. We know through the common sense application of capitalism that we can logically deduct that the Ohio House Bill 11, or backpack bill, can efficiently and effectively force competition into the schools that would require the schools to offer a competitive education. But this school district does not want to. I would like the school board to answer why they don't want the competition. Maybe the people here can answer. I close with the people. If you want a solid and competitive schooling choice, support House Bill 11 and oppose this board's resolution titled Expressing Support to Fulfill Ohio's Constitutional Mandate to Fund a Thorough and Efficient Public School System. Parents and concerned community members, urge your school board to support House Bill 11 and oppose the resolution to oppose House Bill 11. Thank you.
Okay, on to regular business. The first item is a resolution recommending an amendment to the Ohio School Board Association 2023 legislative platform. And so we talked about me reading each of these resolutions. I don't think I'm going to. I think they are all attached and readable on, partially readable on the screen there. So I'm not going to make everybody sit through and me read through that. But a little background on this particular resolution. Last year, the Ohio School Board Association at their convention conference had their delegate meeting, and there was a recommended change to their legislative platform, and it was to include the sexual orientation and gender identity as one of the protected, or one of the classes that the OSBA would advocate for. That in addition to race, socioeconomic, and any other inequity that would affect the opportunities of student success. So that was a very long meeting. It was very lively. There were a lot of people from both sides that stepped forward. to advocate for or to speak for versus or against the adding of those statements or those words into the platform. Ultimately, at the end of the meeting, 75% of the people in attendance, of the delegates in attendance, it needed 75% to pass, and we just fell slightly short at 72.1%, 194 for and 75 against. So this is another request to have another chance to have this language brought forth again. And I fully support it. Are there any questions or any other comments? You have a motion to accept the resolution?
So moved. Second. And as the resolution states, it's consistent with our own resolution of commitment to equity and excellence in education. So our school district has already taken a position on this issue that we support this kind of language. It's included in our own resolution, so I think it makes sense for us to support it at the state level in OSBA's platform.
Anything else? Okay. Can we have a motion? I'm sorry, can we have a roll call or the vote, please?
Mrs. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Zerke?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferris?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Postal?
Yes.
Okay, the next item is a resolution to preserve transparency and public participation in Ohio K-12 education. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the resolution to preserve transparency and public participation in Ohio K-12 education. Do we have a motion to accept the resolution?
So,
Second. Okay, so this one is in regards to House Bill 12. Now, Anna, if you wanted to talk at all about it?
This is the one that basically takes all the powers away from the State Board of Education and instead creates the, I don't want to get the wording wrong, the new Department of, I think it's Education and Workforce. Yeah, the Governor's Office of Workforce Transformation. And basically the governor appoints the position. And it's creating a new position, even though there's already a state superintendent of education. So this is a person that's going to be completely appointed by the governor. And it's taking away all the powers of the State Board of Education, other than to hire the state superintendent, I think teacher licensure, and one more thing. I can't remember what the other thing was, but basically nothing related to education standards or anything like that.
Yes, this essentially will take away the power of the vote of the people. When we elect our state school board members.
Right, there's state school board members by different districts in the state. But it really won't matter because the people won't have a voice to be able to speak on anything.
correct.
Is there anything else? Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Postal?
Yes.
Mrs. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferris?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mrs. Zerke?
Yes.
Okay, item number 3, resolution. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the resolution expressing support to fulfill Ohio's constitutional mandate to fund a thorough and efficient public school system. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so this one is in regards to House Bill 11, Senate Bill 11 and just for,
And House Bill 1.
and House Bill 1 is thrown in there as well. All which are detrimental to the funding of the public school system.
Jill gave a presentation at House Bill 1 at our last meeting.
Based on that presentation at our last meeting, I'm inclined to support the resolution.
Roll call?
Mrs. Zerke?
Yes.
Mr. Postal?
Yes.
Mrs. Chapman?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferris?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Next topic is a discussion on the Ohio Coalition of Equity and Adequacy in School Funding.
So I had reached out to Corey. Obviously, the letter that's included, again, just as a discussion, letters included in the agenda tonight, with Coalition for Equity and Advocacy for High School Funding. So I've got this probably every year since I've been in the district. And I don't know that we've ever brought it to the board to even discuss. So I felt like, is this me making the decision of throwing it in the garbage, when I get it to say no, or asking the questions? So I felt like, again, timing with some things was just the opportunity to share with you what this is about. So Jill and I today kind of put together just a little presentation for you. And I had told Corey that I'd be working on this, but I was in Columbus the last 2 days, and so I apologize if this wasn't on until later today. So I came back from Columbus today, so Jill and I can just, throw a few things together. So obviously by the letter, the district's been invited to join the lawsuit to challenge the constitutionality of the EdChoice voucher program. So, again, after this discussion, I will tell you tonight, Bill Phyllis, who's listed on here as the executive director, and I know from other districts, he's actually come in and done presentations to boards. So that would even be something, that tonight there's no decision. We still need to discuss it, whatever it is. Bill also, he's the expert on what's been going on, what's happening, and I do know from other superintendents that he is very willing to come in and talk to school districts and for you to make an informed decision about the program and being part of the actual lawsuit. So I had also given you a link to, I gave you the link to Vouchers for Ohio. Through there you can link into the Ohio Coalition for Equity, so I don't know if you did that or not. So this just pulls out some of the information, the mission of the Ohio Coalition for Equity and Adequacy and what they do. And again, this is a long-standing group. Talked about school funding way back to the DeRolf. So this is just what they're working on right now, is engaging in this litigation challenging using vouchers for school choice. So the next piece here then, again, just to highlight a little bit about Vouchers for Ohio. We got this information off of the website just to give you information. So again, this is the growing coalition of public school districts that come together to sue the state over their unconstitutional harmful private school voucher program. So right now, we counted today, there's about 122 school districts out of 610-ish in the state who've joined in this lawsuit with the Ohio Coalition of EMA. So again, they're just this is against the Constitution, common school that's been identified. This goes against the Ohio Constitution. And the Ohio Constitution says there's one common school, and the common school that's been identified in the Constitution is our public schools. So, and again, this Vouchers for Ohio, what they're doing, this whole movement started again after the EdChoice movement and the unfair accountability system. So one stat I just want to show you, again, the presentation I heard yesterday was just really good, hearing from, people on both, lawmakers on both sides. So it's interesting where they come from, but I think it's interesting to know that that 90% of Ohio's children do attend our public schools. And they have choice right now. No one has denied people of choice. They have that choice to do that right now. But I think that's important for people to know. And I know you have that in your resolution too. So House Bill 11, backpack bill, obviously this is more of a universal. So they're the two bills with House Bill 11 and Senate Bill 11, which are two very different bills. Obviously, if House Bill 11 passes, it trumps Senate Bill, would be like, we're done. Senate Bill just expands ed choice. And a couple years ago to the board, we did a presentation on ed choice specifically. And we didn't want to bring that into that tonight, but I will tell you the one thing still about ed choice is still, if let's say, and again, we're focusing more on House Bill 11, ed choice vouchers exist now, right? And what Senate Bill 11 is just expanding the ed choice voucher opportunities. So one way or the other, ed choice vouchers don't go away. One of the things that we've talked about though is that, and again, when we presented to the board a while ago, and there were, ed choice was put like crashing halt before the pandemic because of how failing schools were identified. Do you remember that conversation? And we laughed at that, Solon, who's deemed to be, the highest achieving school district in the state of Ohio, had what was identified as a failing school. And boy, ed choice just came to a crashing halt because they're like, there's something wrong with this. So I still think, and I haven't heard a lot about if Senate Bill 11 would pass as far as ed choice vouchers, the expansion of ed choice vouchers. And a lot of that has to do with extending the opportunity. So right now, it's 200% of the federal poverty level. With the expansion in Senate Bill 11, that goes from 200% to 400%. 400% is $120,000 average income of a family of four. 80% of the families in the state of Ohio are at $120,000, or fall below $120,000 or more. So they, and again, interesting, I think they said the average income, average household income in Ohio is really around like 46 to 48,000. So 80% of our families would qualify for that ed choice voucher expansion. And again, there's a lot of research behind it that even with the voucher program that exists right now, the vast majority of students do not take the voucher. They remain in the public schools. So again, just focusing on the backpack bill then is just universal vouchers, is that every parent, every student, every school is eligible for the voucher. There's no restrictions to a family to take a voucher. More money goes with the student no matter where he or she goes. Now, the one thing to remember that I don't think the public always knows is you have to be a school district that accepts a voucher. And if you accept a voucher as a school, as a public, private, parochial, charter, non-charter school, there are some regulations that are put in place. What is not put in place is the accountability system under which the public schools operate and have to answer to. So even if any of these, the private, parochial, charter, non-charter schools take vouchers, they still do not have to meet the accountability measures that we have to meet as public schools. Go to the next one, about the why this is illegal. It's the diversion of funds. Again, it talks that whole that it violates the Constitution, creation of one or more systems of common schools. The thing I want to say, and we talked about this when we did the presentation on vouchers again, is that we have no litmus test as public schools. We take all students, right? We take all students. Someone said it best today, it's not ed choice, it's ed chooser. I love that word. She said, it was one of the superintendents I was with today, she goes, this really isn't about ed choice, that it's a parent's choice. It is a private or parochial school, who they're choosing. So, and again, they don't have to take all students. They don't have to take students with disabilities. They don't have to take students with low income. You know, so a student takes a $5,500, I'm going to talk about cost here in a second. They take a $5,500 voucher, but they go to a school where the cost of private schooling is $7,000. They don't have to take that kid. So we don't have that. We take all kids and we educate all kids. And so again, I think that's really important reminder. And the accountability by which we have to abide by is way different than what a private parochial or even some of the non-charter schools. So I think that's interesting too. So on the next slide, we just kind of give you, and again, here's what I want to say, and the board may not be happy about this. I don't think we're against vouchers per se, okay? But let's make it an even playing field, okay? And if you look at these numbers that we put right here, I don't know how anybody can say it's an even playing field. So the way that it is set right now is that the state's guaranteeing their voucher amounts. If you are a high school student, they will give you $7,500. If you are an elementary student, grades K through 8, your voucher is $5,500. Right now, and it may, this is the one piece that I heard today that this may change, but they are also getting an additional $1,500 per pupil for parochial schools when we do
Their auxiliary,
Their auxiliary.
the money that we administer for St. Mark's and St. Mary's, they get funding
Yeah.
from the state of Ohio, so that's $1,500 per pupil for the parochials.
So if you look at that next bullet though, our students in Grayson School District get $1,009.53 per pupil. From the state. From the state. So that to us just doesn't make sense, right? So, you know, and Jill's gonna talk a little bit about right after I finish with the slide. And again, I think that, you know, school districts would be fine with whatever system, but you gotta fund your public schools first. Fund your public schools fully and accurately, and then we can talk about vouchers. And this is not right. This is not okay. So when you look at it, if we have a high school student, our high school students, and what we get from the state share is less than 1/5 of what a voucher student would get. And it's 13, so it's way less, a little more than 10%, but way less than 20%. This bill also includes vouchers for homeschool children. And again, the regulations on homeschooling are minimal, very minimal. So again, I think it's not that we're opposed necessarily to choice. I mean, parents should have a choice. But to do it this way is not the right way to go about doing it. And I think that's where we have a concern. And additionally, if they're going to do it, then put the same accountability. Kids have to take state tests. They have to expose their financials. So everything that we are held accountable for, they need to be accountable for the same thing. And they're not. And we just would say, well, I think it's fair, right? It's not right. So that's an issue for us. So I think Jill, again, talked to us a little bit about the Fair School Funding Plan and why we say, make us whole with the Fair School Funding Plan, and right now they're not doing that. So
We're in the second year of the biennial budget with the Fair School Funding Plan. It's being implemented this year at 33%. They're phasing it in over a 6-year period, but that's not guaranteed. It's always subject to the biennial budget. If you remember, under the last biennial budget, we were a cap district. We had been a cap district for years. They only set so much aside in appropriations. And if a district grew too much or went over, you got capped. You didn't get all your money you were supposed to get. So we also, during the last biennial budget, we lost about $4 million on that formula that we were supposed to be getting because we were capped. There are districts on the other side that are guaranteed districts during, on the formula, where they're getting money they shouldn't be getting due to probably loss of enrollment. So they guarantee them at a certain level. We'll give you what we gave you last year. So under the Fair School Funding Model, we're at 33% right now. under this model, we are compared to ourselves. Under the old model, everybody in the state was compared to each other. We're compared to ourselves for median income and valuation. We just went through a triennial update in Cuyahoga County, which saw us increasing, our valuation increasing a lot, about 15 to 18%. So that valuation increase, median income increasing, that makes us richer to the formula. So right now, our state share is 13%. Of the average that they came up with for per pupil of $73.50, we only get 13% of that. That's our state share because of our valuation and our median income. Now, in the funding model, we're paid with enrollment, based on enrollment, butts in seats, kids in seats. In the old model, we were paid every kid that was ours. And then they deducted money off of us to send to the charter schools, to the open enrollment, to any, but now we're paid of every kid that's sitting in a seat. So it is accurate that we are getting paid just by true enrollment. For the voucher program, that money is set aside in the state of Ohio. It's a pot of money. That is an accurate statement. But it's estimated, the Legislative Service Commission estimated it to be $1.13 billion. That's just an estimate, but $1 billion. What could that do for us? That's kind of my argument. Fund us first, implement the fair school funding model. There's been some talk of maybe doing it at 100%. What's in there with how they come up with that $73.50, they're using numbers from 2018 right now in the fair school funding model. We've asked, please update the numbers. Teacher salary numbers, teacher benefit numbers, admin salary numbers, that's all figured into the funding model. What's it cost to educate a kid? And those numbers have not been updated in this go around. So that's what we're asking. Please update to current numbers. I think if they do that, we're saying, okay, we'll still deal with the phase-in. We're not gonna, say, but if that pot of money for the vouchers was given to us, or given to, heck, any other agency, how much better would that benefit the public school districts? And not have us so reliant at this point of having so much reliant on property taxes in this district. So, and that's across a lot of the districts. Richmond Heights, I think, is what, $800 per pupil or something. Cuyahoga Heights is the same, and they got hurt really bad by Ed Choice. So, that's just kind of what we're saying is if the funding was, let's fund the public schools first.
Yeah, so just part of the next one again, there is only one pot of money for education, right? It's one pot. I think what we say, it's education, it's
Medicaid, and prisons.
And prisons, that's that three big buckets, in the state of Ohio. So, yeah, so when people say it's separate from how we're funded, it's not. It's figured into how we're funded because it's got to be a guaranteed amount. So here was one thing that Joe's talked about, again, that we learned today is, and again, all we're asking is that part, or I should say all we're asking, one of the things we're asking is if you fund this and you fund this at the correct inputs, right? And what the legislators are saying is, we can't do that because we can't tie the hands of the legislators in the next budget, right? For the fair school funding plan. However, what they're doing is, they're guaranteeing that families get vouchers. So you're still tying a financial, obligation, that's what I want to say, you're still tying that in there, but, so you're not willing to do it for the fair school funding model, but you're willing to do it for vouchers. And then with vouchers, and this was the first I've heard of this today, is even the vouchers have an increase built into them based on them. So they're building that into the vouchers, but yet they're not willing to do that for schools. And for the fair school funding plan, they're not willing to do that. And again, it's, so I think there's a lot of different things that we talked about, but again, I think it's make us whole first, right? It's their obligation. It is their obligation to take care of public education. That's in the Constitution. And then we can have those conversations after that. So, again, just what Joe kind of said, it's one pot of money, it's less money when our enrollment declines, which, it could. We're not saying it will. We're not saying the kids are going to take vouchers and just take off and leave. They're, kids are doing that now. So we don't know what that will look like.
But if our enrollment goes down and our funding goes down, that would be Right, because if you lost students, you would adjust,
Yeah.
your staffing and what have you accordingly.
I will tell you one thing too, is that again, that'll be interesting, right? It depends on how many kids you lose, where they're sprinkled, because it doesn't necessarily mean if you lose, say you lose 100 kids, that we're gonna lose 4 teachers, just average, say 25 kids to a teacher. That's not always the case, right? Because again, where those kids come from grade-wise, and, how does it affect our class size, and it doesn't necessarily equate to that, but we're gonna lose funding for that. Does that make sense? Yeah, so, we talked about what can you do for this, and, obviously, there is, opposition testimony next Tuesday down at the State House, and, what we talked about today, was actually kind of interesting, a superintendent from a school district where she's hit pretty hard, where a lot of the anti-public school sentiments come from in her district. She said that they did like a school choice day somewhere, in the community. And as a public school, they got a table, and they went and they talked about, it is a choice. And so I do say, we want families to choose us. I think we do a very good job of putting out there what we do. But we talked about, do we have to take a different PR tactic to that, to show people we are good schools, we do have great teachers, we have great people in our buildings. And so how do we put that out there to people, we want you to choose us, we want you to stay here in our schools. And I just put the bottom line, again, again, within our public education system, they believe again, private schools aren't regulated. That's a huge part of our complaint. So why are we providing public tax dollars to private schools and entities that are not regulated at all? We talk about, the vouchers for people who have already sent their children to schools and who are, that I say can afford it. And what the research has shown is that, again, kids who have been given vouchers that are economically disadvantaged tend not to take the vouchers and tend to stay in their school districts. And so that's kind of what we look at the bottom line for anything like this. So I just wanted to put that on there. Again, we say same standards of public schools. They don't have to provide transparency regarding their curriculum, their content, their student achievement, any of that. We laughed today, our state report card's 30-some pages and it's intense, right? And most people don't know how to interpret that report card, but yet these schools who would take state money for children in vouchers don't have to do any of that, and they're not accountable for any of that at all, and they should be.
No financial transparency. Meetings are not open to the public. Their boards can meet. They are not subject to the same sunshine laws that public school boards are as well. So that's another couple of things.
Well, and we talked about, we gave an example too of, and we have a lot. I just had it probably within the last couple of weeks. A student who was at private school told the family, "You're done." And so where does that student come back to? Comes back to us. We can't do that. We can't say to a student, "We don't want you anymore, so go somewhere else." We can't do that. We won't, because it's who we are, it's what we do. So.
Can you go back a few slides to the one that had all the numbers on it? Yeah, that one. So, the 7350, can you explain what that 7350?
The 7350 is the state average base cost figure.
Okay.
And then it gets multiplied by our state share index, once they figure in our valuation and our median income to figure out where we're at.
So that would be the full funding
That would be the
amount.
full funding amount.
Yeah.
If anybody actually gets that.
Yeah.
And so we get $1,009 from the state So how much does taxpayers pay?
The
And
tax,
what's the rest of our per student expenditure?
we spend around, our per pupil expenditures are around $12,000, I think, the last time I pulled that number. So the taxpayers are paying around $11,000.
So the legislature thinks that it's okay for our community that is not considered wealthy, well, as far as we are concerned, to pay $10,000 per student, but they think it's okay to give $7,500 to kids to go to private schools.
Yes, exactly.
If the formula is fully funded, I wonder how that would impact property taxes. That would have to all be looked at again, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah. So that could be that could be a change there.
I wanted to read something real quick. An article that I read today from a teacher and longtime football coach in the state. You know, people talk about competition, and that's a reason for school vouchers. So seeing it from a sports perspective, he said, fair competition is a free market in which all the players operate on a level playing field. As a longtime high school football coach, I love an equitable competition between two schools that have spent a lot of time trying to beat equal schools. Everyone who has ever played a game probably would say the same. However, in Ohio, the playing fields are the schools and the schools themselves are becoming more unequal thanks to our state legislature and those who stand to gain from its school choice legislation. Parents have always had the right to choose their child's education, whether it's private, which they pay for, or public, funded through tax dollars. So the imbalances between the two, both on the field and off, were justly accepted. However, with Ohio pushing an almost universal voucher program, we're no longer playing the same game. Now the public will begin funding both, because the governor recently said we still have children who are stuck in schools that aren't doing that well. It seems to me that parents should have some choice in this matter, and we have built this system of choice, which has been somewhat inconsistent. I've always felt that way. It's not fair that private schools get to choose their children. They choose a lot of our children to come play athletics in their schools, and they win state championships with our kids. And that's not an equal playing field. The grass is not always greener academically either. As you said, people come back.
Well, I'm persuaded that vouchers, universal vouchers are not good for our school district. They're not good for any public school district. But our question is whether or not we join this lawsuit, right? And so I did go to the website and looked at the publicly available information. I don't see a copy of the complaint that was filed. I only know that it's pending in Franklin County, but I haven't seen it. So I don't know who counsel is that brought the suit. And I'm also,
I think it was Bricker and Eckler,
okay,
but Bricker and Eckler, there's a just
so I'd be interested in seeing what was filed for one thing, and I'm also interested in knowing whether you have any insight into why more public school districts from Cuyahoga County aren't part of the lawsuit. There are only a couple.
5 is in there.
And, you know, I feel like it's something that we should do, that we should want to be, I mean, considering I feel that we should want to be a part of the effort. But I'm interested in knowing why Cuyahoga County doesn't seem to be in this.
I know that this list isn't accurate, because I know like Homestead Falls just joined the lawsuit, so they're not on. That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think it'd be a good question to ask. I know that when I first started to get it, again, I think at the time, because it was really focused on the ed choice voucher, right? And so at that time, and again, when I just, got it, threw it away, we did not have an ed choice school. And so, and then maybe that's the wrong way to think about it, right? Like, it's not us against you because you're an ed choice, you have ed choice schools, but you don't have ed choice schools should we be, banding together as public schools to support it? So, I don't know the answer to that, that's interesting.
I would love to have the gentleman who you mentioned come and speak to us.
Well, and I think ask him, I took a note just to have him, make sure that he can provide to the board what what was filed. Yeah.
I am concerned about the cost, including, it's not a huge amount of money,
No.
but it's still money that is not going to our kids.
I've heard some people say that, whether we join or not, the lawsuit's out there and they're moving forward, right? So I have heard people say that, like, well, why am I going to pay whatever it is to do it when this lawsuit's going with without us, or anybody else actually joining it, so. There are more districts who are more negatively impacted, especially by ed choice. What's that, like, free lines? Yeah, who has to actually write a check to the state. Because we're getting the same budget in that district. But I can do that, I can reach out to Bill and see if he would come and do a presentation.
There's no time limit, there's no time crunch on this or anything, it's just a matter of,
And I know, somebody else had asked a question too, so like, do you do it this year, or do you wait till, if it's the start of the school next year, right? Like, so how's that fall? I don't know. I haven't talked to Bill directly, so I think those are all good questions that we could ask, like timing and, anything else like that. But from what I understand, he does a full presentation. And the board's to make decisions based on his presentation.
anything else?
I'll reach out to him when it's
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item is our non-agenda public participation, and we don't have any speakers for that, so move into executive session. Do I have a motion? Let's see, it's recommended that the Board of Education move into executive session for the purpose of consideration of the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of an employee or official. Roll call.
Mrs. Zerke?
Yes.
Mrs. Chapman? Mrs. Ferris?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Postal?
Yes.
Thank you.
Go Wolf, go Brown.